Bigger than caves.
Give me some of that sadness.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Dry.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and once again, I'm joined by Angela. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Yes.
Awesome. This has been a long time in the making, this episode.
Quite literally, yes.
And not because of us.
No.
So we're going to talk about Karmen.
Yeah.
Which I think finished like last September or October or something.
It did, yeah. It definitely finished, last year. If not a bit earlier, I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I mean, I can tell you when the first issue was. That'd probably
There we
help,
go. That'll
wouldn't
probably
it?
help us on our quest.
The first issue was March of 2021.
Was it that long ago? Wow.
Yes.
So yeah, it will have been the September.
September-ish.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
It's a very good book.
What makes it so weird is that it was already out in Spanish when the first issue came out in English.
Yep.
And we've now got the hardback, which is very similar to the Spanish and French and every other language's hardback that's been out for like 2 years. So
Some while, yeah.
Here we are with Karmen.
Yeah, over a year after the first issue came out. And it had already been written, and all it needed was the translation, and they did the translation, and then it was meant to come out in like February, and then it didn't, and now it's finally with us, and it says first printing April, but I'll swear this came out in May.
It did.
There you go.
I've got a lot to say, I think, about this one. Do you want to give us a little intro, and then we'll take it from there?
This is Karmen by Guillem, did we decide?
I can't decide if we settled on Guillem or like Guillem or... Guillem.
Yeah.
Double L in Spanish would be pronounced like an E-Y kind of sound. So, Guillem March?
Guillem March.
Jury's out on March.
We don't know whether it's March or Mark or... Yeah.
I think it might be Guillem March.
Let's go with Guillem March.
If I'm wrong...
Yeah.
Then, Spanish lessons and Spanish girlfriend have taught me nothing.
Yeah, basically. You'll be told off by that, yeah. The colour assistant was Tony Lopez. Can pronounce that one. The translation was done by Dan Christensen. And the logo, the Karmen logo, was done by Jack
Duro?
Duro, yeah, because
the X will be silent and the U might be. Yeah, I'd go Duro.
We'll go with Duro. Lettering for Image was Chromatic Limited, and the production artist was Deanna Phelps.
Indeed.
There you go. So Karmen is a bit of a weird one.
Yeah, it does a lot.
It's very existential. So there is this girl, Catalina, known as Katja, who basically slashes her wrists in the bath. And Karmen, who is a figure who basically looks a bit, her body is basically black with a skeleton.
Yeah.
She comes to collect... She like collects souls. So she comes to collect Katja, but instead she takes her on a little bit of a journey to learn about life and what's been going on, and have her have some realizations, which has effect then on Katja's soul, ultimately. There are various other things that go on as she journeys through, flying about and down the streets, and it's like about the nature of life, and because Katja sort of doesn't think she has anything to live for, or does she? It's unclear whether she actually intended to go this far or whether it was just a cry for help. But her roommate has music on, and is completely unaware of the fact that she's in the bathroom. So you don't actually know quite whether she intended it to go this far, but it has gone this far. And then, she sort of sees her, the boy she has a crush on, which is, how did we decide we were pronouncing his name?
It's either Cisco or like Sisku,
yes,
possibly.
Sisku, possibly. But he, who has been dating a girl called Vanessa, he has been her long-time crush since she was a little girl. She's a bit heartbroken about that. She's not really spending enough time with her parents, and all of that. It all accumulates to her cutting her wrists and lying in the bath. But it's interesting because when Karmen appears, she sort of just Katya is naked and she ties bandages around her wrists, and then takes her off on this journey through the city and all the rest of it to come to terms with things. And it's not kind of Carmen's job, as we find out.
Yeah.
Carmen's just meant to collect, but Carmen's a bit of a maverick.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. Feel free to elaborate on any of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. There is a few things that I kind of want to base level get out of the way. I was going to do a written review for this, and I was concerned that my written review was spending a little bit too much time calling out other people on their bullshit rather than before even getting to the book. So the first thing that bothered me with this, and you know this, people who listen to the podcast know this, is that this came out as like 5 or 6 single issues.
Yeah.
For no goddamn reason.
No.
It didn't need to be singles. It didn't really suit being singles because there's no chapter breaks because it's a graphic novel.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, we see too often European books that are written as a single volume graphic novel turned into a 6-issue run for a classic American comics audience. And with all due respect to the medium, fuck them.
Yeah.
Singles are dead. The sooner we all accept it, one of the great gifts of not being able to collect a single issue for 6 months when Diamond decided they weren't distributing in 2020 is that the gift of realizing I don't need singles, and
same.
Neither do Europe, and maybe America just needs to get on board.
Yeah, because having reviewed it as singles, there were some weird page breaks. There was, it kind of was like, oh, so that's where you put the guillotine this month. Okay.
Yeah, completely random page breaks, I think, and often just. That scene's ended enough for that to be end. So, yeah. I think respect the creator's work enough to, if you want to translate it, translate it the way it deserves to be, not the way an American audience will read it. Because what about everybody else? What about the trade readers? And what about the people who appreciate that the book exists and don't need to be drip fed it only to be then sold and I know the whole market basically works on we'll sell you the singles, so then you'll buy the trade, so then you'll buy the deluxe hardback, so then you'll buy the omnibus, but I can't afford that. Let's just cut out the middleman.
Just give me the trade.
Translate the book. Do it. 2, I have real issues with the description in English on the back, so the blurb in English.
Let's have a look at the blurb.
Feeling the need to refer to Karmen as a, air quotes, unconventional angel.
She's the Grim Reaper.
She's deaf, and can't stress this enough. The Spanish edition is in the next room and has no qualms with being like, so Katya's just killed herself and death rocks up. But for some reason,
what happens.
And I can't. I've gone back and forth arguing with myself on why this is. Part of me thinks there's a really sad reason behind it.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks there is a really cynical reason. So part of me thinks the reason is just people won't read it if they know it's about death, which is just a really sad concept that people can't deal with the suicide / poor choice of words, Grim Reaper angle. And the other part, the cynical part of me thinks this is legitimately because Image already have Pretty Deadly, which is a book about a female Grim Reaper.
Yep.
Kind of. And something I've seen in too many reviews of this book, which is people who can't live in a world where there is a female Grim Reaper where they don't mention Sandman immediately. So this is me mentioning Sandman now to undercut all the Sandman mentioning to just say, dude, get a grip.
Yeah.
Sandman's fine. It's been 20 years. It's been longer.
It has been longer.
Let it go. It's okay. Neil Gaiman doesn't care. Vertigo don't care.
No.
Just, there can be other versions of death that don't invoke you to talk about the endless.
Yeah.
And Karmen is far more interesting than that version of death.
Yes.
This is, and don't get me wrong, I like Sandman.
Yeah.
Sandman is a good comic.
It is indeed.
I'm not going to argue that point. There's no point to be argued.
No.
But Karmen is a good comic right now. And
Yeah.
Karmen is a comic that captures so many ideas about death and perception and suicide and the afterlife and the possibility for change.
Yeah.
That thematically this is kind of perfect.
Yeah.
So I think all comparisons to Death and Sandman and whatever else don't matter. I think
No.
also, and the unconventional angel thing, just accept that it's about the Grim Reaper.
It is the Grim Reaper.
If you need that, and what I think this is what got me in the blurb. If you need that part sugarcoating for you, I don't think you're ready for a book about a naked girl who's just slit her wrists in the bath.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think if you're going to struggle with the Grim Reaper, you're really going to struggle with what this book is about.
Yeah, because it's in the classic European comic style.
There's quite a lot of nudity.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, not going to lie. But it's not voyeuristic. I think this is another problem with sort of American comics generally, is the idea of, if we don't show a lot, that's sort of sexualized to a certain extent.
We'll put you in a skin-tight costume, yes.
Pretty much.
But nudity.
But nudity, it's another level. But it is just the fact that, I mean, she does get a coat at one point. She does start wearing a jacket at one point.
Yes.
But still, she doesn't do it up. But it doesn't matter because that's just how she is, how she's drawn. She's just...
Yeah, one of the things that bothered me in seeing other reviews for this is I came across a review where someone talked about Guillem March being very good at drawing sexy women. I'm like, well, one of them's the angel of death and the other one's a dead woman. So are you sure that's the way you want to phrase that? Hey, you sure you don't want to think before you decide to commit that to the internet? Like,
yeah.
But I agree. It's not voyeuristic. It just is what it is. She died naked, so now she's naked. And
it works as well because this is all about stripping her back in a way to, the heart of her soul. And so, the nudity works thematically also because she's been, she's being stripped of her life and all that. It's kind of almost metaphorical also.
Yeah, very much so. I think this feels like a book where every layer of it, of narration and storytelling, narrative, artwork has been considered. So yeah, I think that is probably an intentional metaphor in that. Either that, or I'm giving Guillem March way more credit than he deserves. Who knows? But yeah, I think there's an intention to that works, and kind of as she there's almost a Garden of Eden comparison to go with there. As she begins to know more, she gets a jacket.
That's true.
Which is what happened in the Bible, I believe. They started to know more, and then they got a suit jacket.
That was the real problem they had in the Garden of
Eden.
Eden.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure
that's how it worked.
It all ends with Adam and Eve in suit jackets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, being cast down to earth to go and find some pants.
I feel like everything I say this episode is going to annoy somebody.
Take the Christians box. Excellent. But yeah, no, it is just a very... Because this ended up being a weirdly personal book when I read it. Because I started reading it back in the March, and my granddad died in the April. And I had an issue of this to review.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy. But in a weird way, I drew quite a lot of comfort from all the sort of existential ideas, life and death and all the rest of it. It sounds weird to talk about a book that's about suicide as being comforting, but there we are. It kind of was, because yeah, it's, you know, Karmen is the Grim Reaper, but you know, she's a thoughtful Grim Reaper, and it does ultimately, it's a very hopeful and uplifting book in some ways at the end, but it's not like in a cheesy American movie, you know, orchestra swelling kind of way. It's quite an understated, subtle, you know,
a casual optimism.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I completely agree. I think that's also something that is a little bit lost in telling this in singles. I think if this was delivered to you all in one, the message is so much stronger. And I'm glad that is the version we have now.
Yeah.
I think that optimism is there, even though there are hints of it not being. And I think we see both sides. I think we see... you know, the complete existential dread of what happens when you die, matched up with, but maybe it could be okay.
Yeah.
And it's weird because despite being quite serious and deep on a lot of levels, it's also kind of funny.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not... It's hard to define because it doesn't play with convention as we traditionally understand it. Like, oh, it's about death, it must be super serious. And there are times when it isn't. There is some absolutely ridiculousness in it, and there's humour, and there's all the rest of it. And there are some really, really pretty cityscapes also.
Yeah, we've not mentioned that.
No, it's...
Guillem March is really good at art.
He's very good. I mean, I think I said this was the prettiest book of 2021. I stand by that.
I'll allow it. Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's rare you get one person writing and drawing a book that on both levels is like really high quality. But here I think he draws a really good, pretty, interesting, realistic, but also not entirely.
Yeah, I mean, you can see sort of the inspiration, particularly sort of in there's the whole bit in the back about behind the scenes, and he uses actual photographs of the actual places, but he does in the art imbue them with a sort of slightly otherworldly, you know, it's not 100% realistic. It's completely recognisable as that place.
But there's a weird twist to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think his use of perspective is like crazy all over the place and really weirdly interesting at times.
I like the bit in the bathroom where sort of Karmen walks in and catches in the bath, and like the bathroom's almost like like the walls are almost warped. We're looking down from above. You
get this like where I can't find the panel now, but I know the panel you mean. Where's the panel?
It's near the beginning. There you go.
It's kind of MC Escher-esque in being able to see like all four walls of a room, but also being within the room with,
Yeah.
which is, you know, impressive in itself to then just casually drop as as just half a page in a comic. I think that's part of what makes this so impressive in the art, is that single pages are like incredible, and
Yeah.
it feels like the gift of the European book is that comics come out when they're ready, not
To a deadline.
or rarely to it. I mean, I guess some people have
They
deadlines.
have
Yeah. But like, look at Black Sad. It comes out when the guys want to do some Black Sad, or
Yeah.
things like Echo or Sky Doll, where when the team's ready, you'll get a book.
Yeah, and not
and
before.
they're not ready. But even like, yeah, the early page shots of the bathroom, the detail is insanely good. And
Yeah.
every aspect is recognizable as like places in Spain, and
Yeah.
like details like floor tiling is like, yeah, I've seen those tiles.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And I think it's rewarding in the fact that things that are completely overlooked are not overlooked at all here. Every detail is so considered and designed that it really works. And even when it is weird and perspective is odd and things like that, it still fits together in this really interesting, unique way that feels in keeping with the story being told and with the kind of emotional heft of the story being told.
Yeah. I mean, there's that whole bit as well, the MC Escher-esque bit where we see Carmen's, I don't know, where Carmen comes from, the
kind of...
Yeah, the administrative centre of the Grim Reapers, to give it a name. And that's
Death's
just...
head office.
Death's head office. And that is just absolutely ridiculous and absolutely gorgeous, with all the random stares and the weird perspectives. But yet that fits with sort of the semi-realistic, recognisable bits of Spain. It doesn't sort of clash style-wise because it's just so consistently good.
Yeah, definitely. I had some concerns this was going to be one of those episodes where we just can't stop saying how good the book is, and that's very much the case. Yeah,
that's the case. Yeah, I mean, there's like the blood splatter on Carmen's face that looks like freckles, or freckles that look like blood splatter, depending on how you want to read that.
Could go either way. Yeah. I just think this is really, really good, and the story of kind of Katja coming to terms with the fact that she's dead, in itself is really interesting, and I think it's something we see in other stories. It's not this is the thing, I don't think Grim Reaper interacts with Spirit is particularly, unheard of.
It's not a new idea.
No, it's not unknown, and supernatural entity overstepping their boundaries isn't an unknown concept. Ghost being unable to accept that they've died is pretty classic horror, or not even horror, just supernatural storytelling. I think, the unfinished business vibe of Casper the Friendly Ghost being
one of the prime examples.
Don't know where I was going to go with that, but I don't think it's anything we haven't seen in other places, but I do think it might be the perfected version of a lot of those ideas. It feels like Katja's life story is not particularly a happy one, or particularly the life she wanted, but it's a life that is relatable, and a life that is human, and reflecting Carmen death as, a relatable weirdo is equally strong in creating this overall concept that you can tell this kind of story and make it feel very human and genuine and down to earth, whilst dealing with really big concepts like, hey, death and suicide and the hopelessness of things not going the way you expect them to.
Yeah.
And is there still time to change after death? And which then obviously opens up doors to, you know, just change in general and how people can change and can people change. And we see those different arguments from the different Grim Reapers of the argument that people cannot change and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and
just do your job.
Yeah, and Karmen refuses to do it. I like the fact as well that it's called Karmen and it's really Katja's story, but also they don't spend the whole of this book together. There is quite a significant period where they sort of split up. And it's interesting to see, you know, Karmen has her own
ongoing story.
Yeah, ongoing story and test of a faith almost, because she has, you know, she wants, you know, she's for change, not changing, you know, changing a life, not, you know, not changing her life, changing a life for the better, because she thinks that the system kind of sucks a little bit and that it should be fair that people should get a second chance. And, you know, when Katja does, she's just, you know, just absolutely delighted, because it sort of fortifies the fact that she was right also, in that sometimes it can happen.
Yeah, which is a really good positive message to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's the whole, as well as that whole sweet bit. Well, it's not sweet because it's depressing because he dies, but the chap Enrique who's going to propose to Maria, who works at the local cafe, coffee shop, whatever, and it's the happiest day of his life, and then he gets run over by a car. But it teaches Katja something about life and love and that sort of thing. There's all these little interactions that she has that sort of skew her perspective, but even the amount of effort put into just that little bit in both art and writing is just really, really good.
No, I completely agree. I think in every interaction we see, everything lines up perfectly in both the art and the writing. And I think, especially in that scene, I think it adds so much to Katja's character, and kind of it's one of the first realizations that, you know, she might be a bit dead.
Yeah, that's the point where she's like, oh dear.
The realization that she can't help Enrique get out of the way of the car, the realization that he's dead now and she's not, and that's because she is.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, it's not always the cheeriest book, but I think
No.
As we've said, it does kind of pursue this ongoing optimism as the book goes on.
Yeah, it gets better. It does get better, but it does get worse at points before it gets better.
Yeah, which I think that's okay. I think it's a good message to show that things do get better, but things aren't always good.
Yeah, it's very balanced. It's not unrelenting misery, and it's not unrelenting optimism. It lies in the middle, and really that's where real life lies for a lot of the time. So yeah, it's just, it plays with its concepts really well, and it feels very, I don't want to say experienced because that's the wrong word. It feels very whole in that it seems like Guillem March has, you know, this is like a labour of love for him, and this is a story that is important and he wants to tell, and it just comes through really well.
And it's interesting because we read the first issue, which again doesn't make sense, of, was it Laura and Other Stories, which felt like the drama elements of this without the high concepts.
But that was pre this,
That was
wasn't
older
it?
than this.
Yeah, that was older than this.
He's had an odd career, but a career that's not entirely uncommon for, I think, European artists, where he did some of his own work, or went to work for DC, and is now doing his own work again. And whilst I'm not knocking his DC work,
his Batman, Catwoman, and Harley Quinn, apparently, according to the back of this.
Yes. The thing that sticks with me is Gotham City Sirens, which was him and Paul Dini. And I remember being very, like, everyone was into it at the time. And now looking back, it's like, I've not reread it, but I often wonder, is there a reason I've not reread it? Is there a reason I've not thought, hey, I should go back to Gotham City Sirens, that book everyone celebrated in like 2009?
Cool. Time has passed.
There's a... Wow, we're getting into some really odd spaces.
We are, aren't
in this podcast. I'm not going to lie, there is a tendency for celebrated books from DC with Catwoman and Harley and Ivy to be kind of the sexiest possible portrayal of those characters.
Yes.
And not a very good comic.
Agreed.
And part of my concern is, like, is the high praise for Gotham City Sirens because they all look really hot because he's a good artist and not because it's a good comic? And nothing against Paul Dini. Paul Dini can write.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's other Catwoman, Ivy, Harley books that do not go that route. Harley Quinn's original run, which I think might also be Paul Dini from like the early thousands,
could very well be,
isn't all sex appeal and is legitimately a good comic. Same with, like, I want to say it's Ed Brubaker who wrote Catwoman.
He did do some Catwoman
with, like, Darwin Cook and I feel like that was
like
good.
He did
So yeah, there are exceptions, but I feel like some stuff that was definitely celebrated at the time was because people were incredibly horny for
for well drawn,
and again, maybe Gotham City Sirens actually holds up really well, and I've just not revisited it.
No.
Maybe there's a reason I've not.
Maybe there's a reason, yeah.
I feel like I'm going to reread Karmen a lot sooner than I'm going to reread Gotham City Sirens.
Pretty much, yeah. Because I would reread. I think that's the other thing about this is it holds. It's good to reread. Like now it is a whole piece. Now it has not been chopped into random issues, and you can read it as the creator intended, as an actual graphic novel.
Yes,
it's good for a reread. Yeah, it's good for a reread.
But yeah, Guillem March is back and forth between independent European books and working for DC is fine. It's weird to me when people talk about, and I've seen this obviously on many review places, talking about how he's known for Batman. And I can't help but think, so many people draw Batman per year.
Yeah.
That you can claim that for basically any artist, you feel like.
Many artists have done this, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I can't even think of anyone. But you can probably pick an artist that's worked in American comics and go, remember their Batman? And go, no, I don't. I don't care. And no. I think it's important. I think it would be nice to see people celebrated for being good artists, not known for Batman.
Yeah.
Who cares? I
think he should be known for Karmen.
Yeah, the most... Having not reread any of his Batman recently or his Gotham City, I'm just going to say this is his best work, and I don't need to check. I know that.
Yeah, that is... I would agree.
Having looked at this a lot and having... Like Dustin Nguyen, drew some DC stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's just nowhere near as good as Descender, is it?
No, and it never is going to be.
To be fair, is it like Little Gotham where they're all like the little?
Yeah, it is the little chibi ones. Yeah.
That's gold, but
Yeah.
like his like Wildstorm contributions.
Yeah.
Who cares? Or the
No
Authority,
one-
or whichever
yeah.
book it was. It doesn't look like his artwork. It looks like any other artist.
It's, yeah.
And I think that's the thing. When people are allowed to do the artwork they want to do, they do better artwork than the artwork
They do.
DC Comics pays them to do.
Controversial but popular opinion.
So, yeah, this is amazing.
This is a yeah. It just needs to be read.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other book from last year that I think is as unanimously, I'm not sure that's the word I want. I mean, it's the word I'm using. Like, recommendable. That's not even a real word.
It is now.
Who knows what I'm saying? Unanimously recommendable.
Yeah.
I think this just ticks every single box you could ask for a book to tick, unless you, I don't know, want a Hulk comic or something. In which case, yeah, fair play.
Just
Go read some Hulk. I can't help you here.
We're not going to judge you, but you should be reading this.
I'll even make some Hulk recommendations for you. But I just think this, one of my kind of resounding thoughts on this has been that we need to stop looking, and this again, this is going to annoy some people, but if you've listened to this podcast before, you've heard it said by Zach before. People need to stop looking at the 80s, 90s for the best comics and start looking at Karmen. No,
just generally.
Yeah, I just think we need to start, and this doesn't even just go for comics, I just think in general, we need to start celebrating the things that happen now as being really damn good. Because it's just going to be sad if in 20 years people are like, hey, remember Karmen? Wasn't that the best book you ever read? I think right now we need to start just going, hey, Karmen.
Good book.
Real good.
Do read, yeah. It'd be nice if people had the conversations about how good it is now, rather than, like you say, 10 years down the line when people are like, oh, why did I not read this? And it's like, well, that's on you.
You should read it when it's in print. Don't be the guy trying to get it online 10 years later.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. We've all been trying to get last year's best books when we can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, read Karmen now. It's great.
Yeah.
It's deep, philosophical in a sense.
Whimsical in parts. I just wanted to use the word whimsical.
Good use of whimsical.
Thank
Can't
you.
knock it. It basically ticks all the boxes
it
I
does.
could have asked from this, and art and writing are just beyond belief. This is the best book from last year.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. We've got a long list of good books from last year.
Massively long list.
And I almost feel like releasing the hardback a year, 6 months after, it is just to make it the best book of 2022 as well.
Maybe that was the plan all along.
For Europe, it was the best book of 2020.
For us, it was 2021 and possibly 2022.
And we've got long lists of good books from last year.
Yeah, it was a good year.
Yeah, we've liked a lot of indie comics. We've liked a lot of comics. Non-indie books are available. Some of them have been pretty good. But I feel like this is the one. If you were going to boil down 2021 to books you should absolutely have, this is Karmen.
Yeah.
That is Karmen.
That is Karmen.
English good.
Karmen good, English good.
English good, Karmen good.
Wait for translation, not good.
I love this book.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many different ways to dress that up.
This is one of my favourite books of easily the last 10 years. I'm going to throw that out there.
I'm going to just go, this is one of my favourite books.
Okay, let's go with that.
I think I'm at that point.
think that's probably more realistic. I mean, to be fair, I can't remember what I was reading 10 years ago because that's the past.
That is the past.
That is the past. And we've got to move on. But yeah, I think this is a modern classic. And it's like a modern classic of... I want to say almost like literature. Yes, it's pictures, but it's it just is. It just is.
I think the visuals make this though. I think as a novel, this would be
as a
up
novel.
against
It would be it would not be winning the prizes.
But visually, awesome.
Yeah,
And
stunning.
I can only translation job must be good because Marta's read this in Spanish, thought it was great. We've read it in English, thought it was great. So it translates.
It translates, yeah.
And, you know, shout out to Dan Christensen for that because it's clearly taken bloody ages.
Yes.
And then again, it's taken bloody ages to just
print it.
Staple together. I don't know.
Print it and bind it. Apparently that's more difficult than we knew.
Equally, yeah, whilst this is, you know, Guillem March's thing, Tony Lopez, whatever he's contributed to the colouring as colouring assistant, let's assume it's worked because the colouring is great. His assisting, whatever it was, really worked. There's such a great variety of like pastel colours and kind of just, I mean, it is a quite pastel-y overall. Yeah. The differences in colouring when we see like flashback scenes of Katya's memories are so almost like sepia toned. Sepia, yeah. With her walking through in full colour. Although she is, you know, quite pale, being dead and all. Well, she's pale anyway. She's pale even before the, you know, draining of the blood. But the colouring's great, the lettering's great, the writing is great, the arting is great. It's good. It's really good. I don't know how many ways to say Karmen is good. Yeah, we could just get the thesaurus out and go for synonyms for good. Yeah. Also, and this is something that was lost on single issues, the intro talking about waking up from a dream. Yeah. And not really remembering that dream and kind of putting it together in your mind is incredibly significant for the plot of this book. But by the time I was reading it as issue 6 or whatever, that's gone from my head. So same. I think it was nice here to have it all in one package where that initial intro has the payoff at the end. Yes. I don't know how many other ways to say Karmen's really good. I think we've covered it, probably. Yeah, definitely. I just would recommend this book. I think it is well worth your time. As a comic book reader, as a non-comic book reader, as whatever you are, as a human person, you should probably check out Karmen. Yeah. If, you know, obviously, you know, there is content warnings for suicide and pink hair and Grim Reapers. Death. Yeah. There is some death in. It isn't all an easy read. No. It's not. You're not gonna go, oh, you know, this has left me joyful because it's such a happy book. But it will leave you joyful in a different sense. Yeah, and there is an optimism to it, as we've covered. Yeah. Karmen in herself is a really good character. Yes, she is. And in her kind of fight against her co-workers is relatable, as is Katya. I don't know if I said that right, but Katya, I think, carries a certain amount of weight that is relatable, and it works. This is good comic. Very good comic. Just get Karmen, everyone. Yeah, there you go. That's, if you take one thing away from this, get Karmen should be it. Yeah, read Karmen. I feel like we should wrap this up. Yeah, I think probably should. We'll just go. Don't forget, you should be reading Karmen. Before I alienate anyone or say anything else controversial. But yeah, I think read Karmen. Yeah. And consider current books as being as good as they are.
Yes. There you go.
Don't worry about Sandman, it's always going to be there.
It will.
And hopefully so is Karmen. I think this is my concern. I think this is why I'm so hung up on these things, is so many people I know, and so many people everyone who's into comics know, constantly hark back to what's great from the 80s and what's great from the 90s. And I just would like something this good to always be as available as The Killing Joke or Dark Knight Returns or whatever that book's called. Or whatever. I just think this deserves to be as available as whatever else, as classic comics. This is classic comics.
Yeah, it is, and it should be there for the future people to go back and discover.
Yeah, and discuss at book clubs and talk at great lengths about how this changed their lives and open the doors to what comics can do, because that's what this is. This is one of those great comics that should last forever. Absolutely.
Yeah. We should still be talking about it years from now. Maybe we will, but who's to say?
We will.
We will. Hopefully other people will also.
No, never back down, never give up, never surrender.
It's the way to live.
Never stop quoting Galaxy Quest, never stop reading Karmen.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it there before I say anything else. We have been Angela and Zach.
We have.
Collectively bigger than capes.
Yep.
And we'll be back again soon, no doubt.
Indeed we shall.
And remember that comics are
bigger than capes. And death.